Okay, we're live on YouTube. Mr. Supervisor, the meeting is yours. Let me know if you need anything.
Thank you, Rob. Well, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock, Monday, May 3rd, 2021. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Township of Lyon Board of Trustees. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To
to
the
the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible,
for
with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you very much. Kelly, could you please call roll?
Yes, Lisa Blades,
Present in Lyon Township.
Patricia Carconi,
Present in Lyon Township.
Michelle Cash,
Present in Lyon Township.
John Dolan,
Present in Lyon Township.
Christopher Enlow,
Present in Lyon Township.
Sean O'Neill,
Here and in Lyon Township.
Robert Swain.
Present in Lyon Township.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the approval of the consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to look that over? If so, a motion would be in order.
I'll move the approval of the consent agenda.
I'll support.
We have a motion by O'Neill, support by Carcone. Please, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Move on to the approval of the agenda. I do have something to add. I apologize to the end of to G. And this was a last minute addition to the addition that we're building. It is for some concrete replacement in the front. So I'd like to add that as a G if that's possible.
I'll move the approval of the agenda as amended to add item G for concrete replacement at Township Hall.
I'll support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? We'll move on to announcements and communications. Anyone have anything they'd like to announce?
I do. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the South Lyon United Methodist Church. They had a group come out and work on the cemetery at New Hudson all day on Sunday, and they did a fantastic job. So hands out to the mission team because they are amazing, and they usually work on our cemetery about every other year. I just want them now to come yearly if they possibly could, but they did a fantastic job. Bunch of kids. We post some stuff I think Catherine did to the Facebook page, and it'll be in our newsletter in June. We also have a Northville school election tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. So precinct 7 only. If you would like to vote tomorrow, Hardy Elementary School will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. for a millage vote. I'm sorry, school millage vote. I shouldn't say millage, school millage vote.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to communicate or announce?
John, I just have one last, I guess, advertisement to take the township's master plan survey. The Planning Commission would like the survey to shut down here May 7th. So that's on Friday. So you've got all week to take that survey. You can find it if you want to scan that QR code that's up on the screen, or else we have links on the planning page and the main township website page. We've got about just shy of 700 people who have completed the survey so far. So turnout has been great.
Great.
That's good. Okay. Anyone else have anything to add? Okay, seeing no one, we're going to move on to the call to the public. This is where you can come on and talk about non-agenda related issues or comments. Please keep it at a 3-minute interval if possible. And please state your name and address for the record. Rob?
We don't have any resident phone callers in the meeting at this point.
Okay. We'll give it just a second if anyone would like to call in, and
Okay.
just give it a second. Still no one, Rob?
Still no one.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead then and move on, and we're gonna close the call to the public and move on to reports. First up is the DDA. Tina?
Okay, hi, everyone. Good evening. Couple of items I want to get you caught up on. We're continuing our efforts to assist our local business owners through their response and recovery from the COVID crisis. And our task force did conduct a third survey of our businesses, and we're in the process of compiling that data and using it to help us to create strategies to assist them as we continue to move forward. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you have heard that hiring continues to be a very significant issue for our local business owners and across the state and even in the country. And what we're doing locally is we do have a Facebook page called Lion Works Job Opportunities. And right now we have over 600 followers. And I've been advertising all of the open opportunities for folks in our community. So as businesses post any type of job offerings, I grab those and then continue to share them on that Facebook page. So we're hoping that that's assisting them in their efforts to try to find some employees to fill these positions. If you drive around town or are on Grand River, you will see the tremendous number of help wanted, now hiring signs. So we're trying to do our best to assist them in that effort. We did have a couple of ribbon cutting event. We had a ribbon cutting event on Friday, April 30th with Everwood Academy. It ended up getting a little rained out, but we were able to do a little bit of celebrating with them. And then we also have a ribbon cutting event planned for May 13th. This is in coordination with a grand opening event for CD Orthodontist and the Lion Dental Implants. They are located in the Lion Ridge Medical Center, right there in the Lion Town Center. And they're going to be hosting that event on May 13th from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m. And so we'll be coordinating ribbon cutting event for that. I do continue to work with our chamber director on seeing if we can get some additional ones scheduled as places continue to open and feel a little bit more comfortable holding these types of events. We do have a full agenda at our meeting next week on May 11th. That meeting is going to be held at 7 p.m. So I'd encourage anyone interested to please log in. Additional information will be provided on the packets by Friday of this week. And then lastly, just wanted to report that the hiring committee is moving forward with efforts to advertise the open position, my open position, and we'll start to begin the hiring process as soon as we get some candidates identified. And that would conclude my report.
Thank you, Tina. Any questions for Tina? Okay, we're gonna move on to Chief Van, Fire. Hi, Chief.
Hi, how you doing? Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to report that we did hire 2 new paid on calls this month and or actually April. And one is Erin Walton and the other one is Catherine or Katie Whittington. So they're a good addition, come fully trained to our department. And so we look forward to their contributions. And last week, we also had our quarterly meeting with Huron Valley Ambulance, just to make sure responses are timely, quick response, and the service is still where we want it to be. So that went very well. And that's really about all I have.
It's nice that you're still getting the paid on calls coming in.
Yeah, we're getting our numbers up pretty good there. You know, from what we lost in a few months ago, you know, we've probably seen about 10 or 11 that we've hired in the first quarter of the 21. So we're really happy with that.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, Chief, thank you. Any questions for Chief? All right, I am not sure the lieutenant is here tonight. I know he was on vacation, and I don't know if anyone's here to represent him, but it doesn't look like that. So we're going to move on to the Planning Commission.
Okay, we had 2 meetings in the month of April. The first one was Monday, April 12th. And on the agenda, we had public hearings for the Walbridge Lion Distribution Center 2, that was the special land use, and combined with that was the site plan. The planning commission approved the site plan with regards to the special land use if the township board approves it. So that was that. And then we also had the Culver's conditional rezoning also and the site plan, and they also approved that as long as it had the approval of the Culver's conditional rezoning approved by the township board. That was all we had on that one. And then we had our next planning commission was Monday, April 22nd. And that we only had one new business on that. And that was the Orchards Crossing Plan Development, the conceptual review, which is on the township's board agenda tonight. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Okay, we're going to move on to the ZBA. Please.
We had a meeting on April 19th. There was one case. There was a request to have a variance that would have been for, let's see, 500 plus square feet on an accessory, 576 square feet requested variance on an accessory building, and that request was denied unanimously. And that is all we had on that agenda.
Okay. We'll move on. Any questions for Elise? All right, we're going to move on to the Park Advisory Board. Robert, anything going on?
Yeah, so first off, I guess I'd just like to remind everyone that we still have a vacancy if anyone is interested or knows of anyone who might be. Secondly, Aaron is working on a proposal for looking at expanding the play structure offerings. Right now, we just have the toddler up to 5-year range covered, and she's looking at a 5 to 12 structure. And pending responses from a couple of vendors, she's hoping to be able to bring that in the next month or two for the board to see here. Other than that, we have our movie event coming up on May 22nd. We conducted a survey. The title has been selected. I can't announce the title to start advertising until we get the license actually issued by the studio, but we're on the way there. It should shape up to be a good event. We got 70 some responses to our survey. Generally good outlook. The number of people who were over on a scale of 1 to 10 of how likely they were to attend, filtering that down to the 7s and above, we had almost 200 people indicating that they would be attending. So
Very good. I hope that turns out real well. Okay, anything else? No. All right, we're gonna move on to the water, and I'm gonna give that. I did have a talk with Mr. Kidston at AOP today, and the softening is moving forward. We still haven't got the written approval from Eagle. He is hard on them, but that's not slowing him down. He's going ahead and started the process of replumbing the Woodwind pumping building to accommodate the softening equipment. So he's going ahead and moving forward with that. So we're going to be doing pretty well once we get that approval. The other thing is the 9-mile, 2 million gallon tank. You can see it's starting to rise. We've had a little bit of rough weather, and they're getting the roof on that, and then that'll start moving skyward. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, you'll start seeing some height put into that tank. The building for the pump stations is built, and I think they're starting to install the 1,000 per gallon a minute pumps in the building. So things are going in good shape with the water. I think by the end of the year, we're probably going to have some soft water flowing. Pretty proud, pretty happy, and things are moving forward. If there's anything you guys want, any questions, if I can answer them for you, I would.
John, was there a decision regarding the logo for the tank?
I think we're just going to keep it the same. And I got the consensus of most everybody on the board saying they'd like to keep the branding the same as on the tower. So we had a little bit different, little wider, a little thicker letters to show it up a little better. But it's basically the same compass and the same font, and it's going to look very similar. Probably reposition it a little different on the tank so it can be seen well. And we also are working on the new Hudson water tower. We're starting the painting. We're getting ready to check it all over, and that's going to get cleaned and painted. It's been on the agenda for many years, and we're finally moving that forward. So things are coming right along. Anything else? Anyone like any other questions about the water? Okay, then we're going to close the reports up and we're going to move on to unfinished business. And we have a few things that are unfinished. One is the private roads adoption. And this is a second reading, and I don't think we've changed it from the last reading. Am I right with that, Brian?
Yep, that's correct. It's the same modification to 15 feet in width.
Okay, any questions about that? If not, a motion be in order to move that to final.
I'll move the adoption of ordinance number 04-21.
I'll support. Go ahead, Patty. Mhm.
Patty, support? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we're going to move on to the Greystone Village zoning ordinance. Consideration the adoption. Brian, do you want to bring that? You want to talk about that at all?
Just briefly, if this is the project from Pulte Homes, 37 single-family houses on the east side of Griswold, between 8 and 9 Mile. The project was in good shape during your first reading. We clarified a couple of things, including the name of one of the roads that's been updated, so there's no conflicts. I think we're in good shape and don't have any open planning items to be addressed.
Okay, anyone have any questions? All right, a motion be in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the zoning map amendment number 05-21 Greystone Village Plan Development Ordinance.
This is a final.
Patty?
Patty, support? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to move on to the consideration of the approval of the Greystone Village Plan Development Agreement to authorize the signature by this supervisor and the clerk.
Since Carol's.
We prepared the PD agreement. It's been reviewed by planner and engineering, approved by the other side. So we're ready to go with it.
So we just need approval of the signatures?
Yes. Do you want to have these actual agreements brought to the board? Or do you want it left to just the planner, attorney, and engineer to complete these in the future, rather than have it a separate board agenda item?
I don't know if we need it as a separate agenda item, but usually we've kind of put it in the same package as the final PD.
Okay. All right. So we'll combine it going forward then. Okay.
Okay, well, motion to be in order. If everyone agrees.
I'll make a motion to approve the plan development agreement and to authorize the signature by the supervisor and clerk as provided by our attorneys.
I'll support.
We have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
No, we still need to firm up the exhibits. So I
Okay.
have not seen
Okay.
those yet. Okay.
All right. We won't sign until that happens.
All right, that concludes our unfinished business. We're going to move on to new business. The first one is a request to grant a permit for the fireworks display. We do this pretty much every year, except for last year. But Ken, do you want to talk about that at all? Or Chief?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes, no, it was, yeah, this was approved at the last admin meeting. It is routine, it's professional. show, and we work closely with Walnut Creek, and we're also in attendance there as well, making sure that they're just being safe. And so we are we're comfortable with this proposal.
Okay. And we do this pretty much. We've been doing it every year. It's reoccurring. Any questions?
I'll
Okay,
make a motion to approve the permit for firework display at Walnut Creek Country Club.
Or
Support.
okay.
Was it?
Okay.
It was Lisa Blades. Okay.
We have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to move on to the consideration of the introduction of the ordinance, the Charter Township of Lyon to amend conditional rezoning for Culvers, AP 2114B. Brian, do you want to start that?
I will. Thank you, John. We have an approved site plan for a Culver's restaurant on the east side of Pontiac Trail, just south of Lillian Street. Those of you who are familiar with the site, it's largely vacant today. There is a bit of a unique situation on this property in that the frontage on Pontiac Trail is zoned B2, and the eastern, I'll just say for this discussion about the eastern half of the site is zoned R0.3 today. There's no legal access to the eastern portion, and so it's largely unusable as part of a business or as part of a site plan. We received an application to modify the approved site plan. And so what this looks like today, the Planning Commission has reviewed this. The site plan is largely the same, but this amendment request would allow the developer to not use underground detention. Instead, they propose to conditionally rezone that eastern portion of the property to B2 to match the front. And the eastern portion of the property will be used in its entirety for stormwater detention and a compensating cut for the floodplain. And so in place of a largely vacant portion of the property, we're going to end up with stormwater basins and a large amount of screening and landscaping along the northern side of the lot and the eastern side of the lot. With this request for rezoning, Mr. Paisley, who's on the call tonight, has offered the following conditions: that use of the eastern portion of the site is only used for the detention basin and compensating cut. It will be seeded with wildflower mix and maintained in accordance with the rest of the site. Screening for the east and northern portion of the site will be provided with mounding and landscaping, as you can see on the plan in front of you. And then the condition would also allow for underground utilities to be permitted on this site or under or through it, if need be. And then finally, all of the elements shown on the site plan would be incorporated by reference into this rezoning. From a practical standpoint, what this means is that the commercial portion of this site, or the commercial uses, are strictly limited to the detention. There are not going to be parking spaces on the property that's currently zoned for residential. There is not going to be site lighting or landscape walls or anything along those lines. We view this, and the Planning Commission agreed, as ensuring that there's going to be a buffer on the eastern portion of that property that goes above and beyond what we would have gotten had this remained as RO3 zoning. So looking forward to the future, one of the things that we often get asked of when a rezoning is proposed is what happens if the site changes, and ultimately if this portion of the property is not used as it's proposed today, it would revert back to its existing R0.3 zoning. So we find that it meets all of the criteria for a rezoning that it can. The conditions help meet that. If this were not tied to a specific site plan and these particular elements were not proposed, we don't think it would meet all of the criteria. But with these rezoning criteria, we are in support of it and find that it meets the ordinance and our master plan intent for the site. So the Planning Commission held their public hearing on the conditional rezoning and did not receive negative feedback. And so as a result, the Planning Commission has recommended approval of this conditional rezoning request. The Township Board would, if you choose to approve this application, this would be your first reading and you would have a second reading at your next meeting. I can take any questions that you might have.
Does anyone have any questions for Brian?
How common is it that we have this situation where a single tax parcel, there are multiple zoning districts?
You have a couple specifically in this direct area. The property is adjacent to the south. I think maybe 2 or 3 parcels to the south are in the same boat as this, but it is fairly uncommon.
I have a question. This might be a little bit for Carol and Brian. So by doing this conditional rezoning, does this set any sort of precedent for other parcels where this may be a similar condition? I'm thinking back before my time, but it might have been, this may have come up when the Meyer proposal came in. I don't know if this is just independent, or is this going to put us in a position where we almost have to do this for each of the other types of situations?
I mean, I think every land use situation, you have to decide on its own merits, because every parcel of land is unique. There are no parcels that are identical. And so I think that this will not set a precedent. However, I think when this came to mind, that we realized we had a property with split zoning, that it's probably worthwhile to look at those other parcels and maybe make some legislative decisions as a body as to whether we want to consolidate those parcels into one particular zoning classification. And make that decision before you're maybe faced with another conditional rezoning request.
Can we ask, like, what's the right avenue to go about doing that? Do we just send something back to the Planning Commission to say, can they take a look at these?
Well, I think since the Planning Commission's doing the master plan update, and Brian can chime in here, they're really taking a good look at a lot of the properties, I think. And I think during the course of doing that, they also look at the zoning classification for those properties. So I think we can probably determine which ones are out there. Brian, you want to add to that?
I agree. And it's one of those, one of the policy recommendations I think you had suggested, Carol, is as we look forward to updating the future land use map, we may, as a matter of business, start rezoning some of these properties to match our future land use plan also. So it may, depending on timing, we may undertake it as part of that process.
Okay.
Ryan, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So when we're talking about the screening to the east and to the north, would there have been any screening in place in their original plan?
The screening was limited to just the B2 portion. So it was right along the parking lot on the east side. And the remainder of the site was going to remain an open field as it sits today.
And is this going to create a complete visual barrier?
Yes, as it's proposed, the density there would be a complete visual barrier within, assuming common growth patterns, 3 to 5 years.
And then my last question would be, since we have an occasional difficulty with a particular location in our township with lots of dead vegetation, what is the guarantee on screening if there's dead trees in 3 to 5 years? What's their obligation to replace that?
If any of that vegetation dies, technically they're not in compliance with their approved site plan, so they would be obligated to replace that.
So that wouldn't just end with a tree guarantee. I mean, that would be just a consistent expectation, correct?
Correct, yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Leslie, do you want to add anything to this? I see you have a letter in there.
I have no issues regarding the conditional rezoning request.
Okay. Do you know, there's certain things that make sense, and this is one of them that makes sense to me. And the reason why I'm saying it makes sense to me is because it is a vacant field in the back of the property. And the extra expense to do an underground retention pond, when you can actually build a retention pond on top of the ground, to me, it makes sense for the developers, it makes sense for the township. And I think that because they are going to work this pond a little bit, instead of leaving it a grown-up field, it'll probably end up looking a little nicer for the people that are around it because of the barriers and the trees and the nice landscaping that they're going to add to this. So I think it's a good thing. I know the applicant's here, and I don't know if he would like to talk about anything on here, but now would be the time if you want to add anything to it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. No, I think you guys hit all the main points. Brian, thank you for that summary. Like, just to address, I think the question of, setting that precedence, I think, a lot of these split zones that you might see in other cases may not be landlocked like this property. So I think that was one point that, kind of drove our site, was that residential portion was landlocked unless an adjacent property owner purchased the site and created that access. So I think, the current plan that Brian brought up as far as the additional landscaping, it's almost, to the screening question, a double, screen. We've got the mound and then also the evergreens on top of that, which we believe will alleviate any visual or noise potential, crossing over into the residential side. And then, as you stated, the rest of the site plan remains the same. And, we're excited to kind of develop that and make it, improve the aesthetics of that portion of the site for the benefit of the township.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions or any concerns about this rezoning?
Yeah, I would point out too, that remember, with a conditional rezoning under our ordinance, there's also a conditional rezoning agreement that goes along with it that gets recorded against the property. And so that will make sure that all the conditions will be maintained in perpetuity.
I have one last question for Patty. Patty, were there any residents in attendance at the Planning Commission meeting to express positive or negative feedback?
No, not at all.
And that was a public hearing that was duly noticed?
Yes. Yep.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, a motion would be in order.
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion. Jinx.
You go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional rezoning for Culver's AP 21-14B.
I'll support.
Is it the first reading?
It is.
Yes. Mhm.
Yes, first reading.
Okay. We have a motion and a support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's move on. We have Walbridge Lion Distribution Center 2, Special Land Use AP 2113B. Brian, you want to start us out there?
Sure thing, John. Thank you. Up for consideration this evening is a special land use for a speculative industrial building on 20 acres just east of South Hill and on the south side of Grand River Avenue. So we're talking about this site here that my cursor is on, just east of Magna. That's the white building that you're looking at on the screen. The Planning Commission has reviewed the site plan. They reviewed that, as Patty had mentioned, at their early April meeting and approved it conditional upon the Township Board's consideration of the special land use this evening. The special land use is in effect here because the entire site falls within our wellhead protection overlay district. So with the spec building, we anticipate that any tenant to the structure would come back before the Township Board for special land use considerations. And as with other spec buildings of late, within the wellhead district, we'll be looking at specific operational elements for the tenants themselves. This particular building is designed to have up to 2 tenants. You can see it's a pretty symmetrical building, and so you can anticipate that there would be office space in each of the corners at Grand River Avenue. And then each of the potential tenants would have their own set of loading docks as well. The project itself is designed to be a fairly long and narrow building so that all of the wetlands that are on site today, which are regulated, go undisturbed. And so from that perspective, the design really minimizes the impact on wetlands. There's substantial vegetation that is proposed as part of the plan. And I know that that Mr. Ackerman is here this evening and will show you some elevations of the structure itself. It complies with all of our ordinance requirements, so we have no concerns with that specific, with those specific criteria. You have our report dated April 23rd in terms of the special land use criteria. And again, as with other spec buildings recently, a lot of them are not able to be determined in full today, although we don't have any specific concerns about the structure itself. The land is zoned to be used industrially. The building will allow for permitted uses, and our additional review moving forward will help weed out any of the specific wellhead protection standards, such as regulated substances, the ability for the property to be served with utilities, minimize impact on wetlands and the wellhead, flush out any contamination issues that might be present on site, and so on and so forth. Finally, we'll be able to determine better whether or not the tenant would affect the water quality in the area. Some of the things that we can confirm today are that disturbance of soils and topography and drainage are relatively well kept in check here. There's not a lot of grading that needs to occur to make this plan happen, because it's a relatively flat, vacant site today as it exists. So we really don't have any concerns at this point in time in terms of compliance with our special land use standards. Again, will depend heavily on when those tenants come in and can present a bit more information about their industrial activity. So with that and the Planning Commission's recommendation, we would recommend approval subject to the Township Board's comments this evening.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Leslie, do you have anything to add?
No, not at this time.
Okay, does the applicant want to go ahead and give us a small presentation, is what I heard?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is John Ackerman with Atwell. As always, Brian does a thorough job in explaining everything and kind of steals some of the thunder off of a presentation. But so I'll be try to be brief on this. Make sure, does everyone see my screen? All right, perfect. So the site location, as everyone is aware, we have been before you several times regarding this, several projects within the Walbridge Grand Land Holdings. Originally, we had the South Hill Business Park, about 95 acres, 10 lots, that is approved and under construction as we speak right now. Then we came in front of you for LDC 1, which is a 280,000 speculative industrial distribution center. And then this evening, we're here in front of you for LDC 2, which is about little over 20 acres. And as Brian mentioned, about 150,000 square foot. And this one, we're actually marketing this towards the manufacturing side of industrial versus the distribution. In talking to several brokers, Walbridge determined it was best that we kind of take a look at from a manufacturing side. So when we, get into it soon, when we looked at parking and some of the accessory uses on this site, it was catered towards that use versus distribution. The remainder of the parcel over here, the remainder 290 acres is still open and vacant, and as well as the property in front of Walbridge's yard. The site itself, as Brian alluded to, is an irregularly shaped site. It's bordered by Grand River on the north side, the existing Magna development on the west side of the site. This area right here is actually slated for expansion of the Magna property once they deem fit. East side is a utility easement and then other uses. And then the south side is actually bordered by the new Hudson drain, which was recently improved and widened as part of the South Hill Business Park project. So the site itself, again, as Brian kind of alluded to, was tricky trying to figure out what could work on this site. There's a lot of wetlands kind of scattered throughout, but the primary wetland complex is right here. It's a higher quality wetland that's kind of directly associated with the new Hudson drain. So the focus was, what can we do on this site to make a marketable building while minimizing the impacts to the wetlands and a lot of the trees that sit on this site. And the winner is what we have in front of you tonight. It's 150,000 square foot in size. It is designed to cater up to 2 tenants with office space on the corners of the building. We'll get into that in a little bit. The site itself right now has 295 parking spaces proposed. Based on your ordinance, it's only 202 are required, but in speaking to several brokers, it was highly recommended to us with manufacturing that you try and overpark the site as much as possible because they will use all those spaces. The site has 16 truck docks split between the 2 sides of the building right now, 8 on each side, and has, where we could provide without providing any additional wetland impacts, we have 20 trailer parking spaces. Right now, we're just under 3 acres in total wetland preservation on the site. The site access point there's 2 access points for the property onto Grand River Avenue. We have had, because we know there's lots of curb cuts going on along Grand River. We've had several conversations, including a face-to-face meeting with them, or I should say Zoom, with them. And their only concern is the eastern entrance. They want to be limited to a right-in, right-out configuration. So we're appealing to them and we'll be providing right-in, right-out only at that location. We'll get into the land. I know we touched on the landscape as well. That was a subject of a lot of conversation at the Planning Commission. With us this evening is Guy Toro with Carlson Architects. I'm going to hand it over to him for discussion about the building itself.
Thanks, John. I'm Guy Toro. Good evening, everyone. The building at Grand River is precast concrete insulated panel, introduced horizontal reveals. It is a painted precast. We've articulated the base with a form liner across the body of the building in a split face detail and changed colors there to create a strong base for the entire building. At the 2 entrances that are on the east and on the west, we've used split face block to change the scale for the people and to give visual cues to where the entry is. We've set canopies with a little accent color there. We've introduced clear story lighting into the warehouse area. or operations area. And then where we anticipate offices to occur, we provided additional glazing for entry and also for office spaces. We are just under 45 feet tall at the maximum. We actually average a little bit lower than that for the body, but where we're creating breaks in that overall precast panel, we bump up a little bit there. John, if you would go to the next slide. So this gives you a little bit more detail of how the building is put together. This is the east elevation and the west elevation. That which fronts Grand River, there is no parking. There's no actual physical entrance. There's just the visual cue along the street, so you know where those entry points are. You actually park on the east and west, and that's where our entries are. That's where we introduce the split face block. We wrap the canopy around to bring a little bit of color to the building, and then break up the overall facade and introduce a change in color in the precast panel, give an opportunity to integrate the customer's logo there and change the color of those panels for that. You can see the office area. We brought in additional windows for the amount of office space we anticipate. Next. And then this is the rear of the building, the south of the building that does not front any drive, and it's purely the business end. Loading docks, we have drive-in as well as dock well height for the building. And you can see it's set up for 2 separate tenants. Next one, John. So to give you an idea of the color palette, everything is in a warm gray. The top color is the accent, which is the cornice that will wrap the building. The main body of the building is color number 2, where we have used the form liner to create the split face look. We've changed that color for a strong base that wraps around, and then the vertical accents that separate the sections of the building and also create entry points is darker color number 4 below. The split face block, you can see again is a warm gray, is an accent, and then the canopy would be in the fascia color there, the Newport blue. Next one, John. So when we first presented the building, you know, we explained the size, the scale, and how it runs very parallel to Grand River, and it's a very linear building. And we had said that we integrated the landscape with the building. In the original drawings that were submitted, there was a limit to what we showed at that time. We were still developing that scheme a little bit for the sake of the rendering. So we've come back to show the full force of what the landscaping is. And it's set up to create a rhythm along that facade to help filter the views from Grand River, and also to provide some sort of verticality against the horizontal nature of what the building is. We presented at the bottom a cross section through so that you could understand that the building really has very little impact to Grand River. We're over 130 feet from the edge of the drive. There is a berm on which the landscape is placed. Our building's under 45 feet tall, and it simply isn't that strong of an element to those that drive by or walk by. So we showed from a car or a pedestrian the extent to which the landscape filters that view of the building itself. And then we went back in the next one, John, and updated renderings to again show what's there. So you can see it's, you know, the berm helps a lot. You get this rhythm across the facade, and I think it does a very nice job of softening the building to the road. And it's a pretty dramatic final presentation of the building and the landscape. So you've got views looking from east to west and west to east. And at the bottom, that's actually inside the screened area of our landscaping on the site. If we actually took it from our property line, you really don't see the building at all because everything in front of you is trees. And John, if you wanted to go back to the landscape plan, you could probably show how we buffered all the edges of the building. But that's the building fully integrated with the landscape. And I don't know, John, is there another slide? I think that's the last.
No, just the final slide. Thank you, Guy.
There.
As Brian kind of read you his comments, and Leslie, so far the process has been fairly clean and simple. The comments were relatively minor. We have no concerns with any of the recommendations in either of the letters. The one comment I did want to mention was that in CES's review letter, they talk about the path system along Grand River, and they recommended that the master plan calls for a 10-foot path We had proposed right out of the gate a 5-foot concrete walk. The concrete walk basically matches exactly what is directly next to us at Magna. It matches pretty much on both sides of Grand River all the way down to the traffic circle is 5 feet concrete walk. So we're just consistent with what is currently in place along the Grand River frontage. Also with us this evening is Adorno Piccinini from Walbridge. So if you do have any comments or questions regarding the building itself, process, Adorno is here to answer any questions that you may have. That is all from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I want to open the floor to some questions, and please, would anyone like to start asking any questions, please? Chris, you want to start?
Sure, I can start us off. Look, I'll get right to the point on this one. Walbridge, you guys came to the board previously with the industrial park south of here. And I had pushed pretty strongly to get a stub road up to this property and through this property to Grand River. Part of that resistance from you guys was that there were wetlands impacting that potential connection. But looking at this proposal, you have a survey which shows no wetland conflict for what we are trying to get done. Now you come back to us with another industrial building, which is going to push additional traffic out onto Grand River, as opposed to giving them a couple options to get out and get over to South Hill for the signal. So what I need you guys to do is to come to the table with some better fixes for the traffic issues out here, not just these tapers and right in, right outs. So until that gets done, I cannot support the special land use.
Okay, anyone else like to comment? Sean? Anything?
Sorry, I was having a problem with my muting feature. Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I would agree. I was also on the same page with trying to provide some access. That ship has obviously sailed because you've already developed and I guess designed designed the property to the south. I was thinking from a traffic access standpoint, there is a small property to the east of you. Is there any thought about providing some reciprocal access easement potential from your property, that driveway to the east, in some way, designing in an easement? Maybe that's something that could help with traffic so that someday when they want to do something, they might be able to take advantage of your driveway. They've got 2 curb cuts that are right next to each other. And someday when that property is redeveloped, they're not going to be able to have 2 driveways. So that could be one helpful option that could address some of the things that Chris mentioned and some of the concerns we've had. I know at this point our role is to consider the special land use, not the site plan, and I appreciate Guy's presentation because though we're looking at the special land use, it's also nice to take a look at the site and at the building, which is the planning commission's role in this area of the township and not the township boards. But I had a couple quick questions. The windows, I appreciate how you got some windows across. Well, first of all, let me back up. I appreciate that the loading dock is not on Grand River. When you talk about, neighbors and designs and layouts, that's a mistake I hope we'll never duplicate. But I'm wondering if we can perhaps increase some of the size of the window, the window sizes across the front maybe, or wrap those same windows around the east and west corners until it hits the point of the logo. I don't know if anyone can share that screen, but basically over the office portion down the east and west side of the building. Not a huge or drastic change. And again, I know that's not necessarily our role, but just a couple comments that I had, and kind of carry those higher small windows around the corner just to kind of complement the office type design that you guys have, wrapping those east and west corners. I thought that might make the building look a little bit more interesting and kind of break up. Those east and west walls are very long and not terribly broken up on the higher level at the wall, on the higher side of the wall, I should say. Obviously the back is screened and no one can see it. It's, for service, but those are the only comments that I had or requests that I had. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sean. And again, I'm echoing what Sean said. This is a special land use for the water protection area, and I'd like to try to keep it onto that. Anyone else? Lisa? Want to go ahead and,
Yeah, I do appreciate Sean's comment regarding the loading docks in the back. I do really, I do like the landscaping. It's very attractive. It seems like it has a very thematic concept to it. So I visually, I find that a nice touch. But I can't help but go back to Chris's comment and Sean's comment dealing with some of the traffic impacts of this. And really, I see a lot of this additional traffic with the growth of all of these industrial facilities along Grand River. I see caravans of Amazon trucks, like literally 6 to 10 Amazon vans going up and down, not just Grand River, but they're finding other routes. They're finding alternate routes of getting access and avoiding traffic. And so, I know this is not dealing with Amazon itself, but as we increase the number of businesses and industrial uses on Grand River, that has an impact on the surrounding area. As I said, 6 to 10 Amazon vans going down Silver Lake Road at Kensington Road. That's how far reaching some of this traffic pattern really has along this segment. And so if you can do a little bit more mitigation for this traffic that is going to come as a result of that, I can't help but address it at this time because, going back to Chris's comment, but regarding the site, the special land use, I don't really have any other additional concerns other than that impact that is likely to take place.
thank you, Lisa. Patty?
Well, I actually like the plan. I think we've been waiting a long time for Walbridge to actually develop their property. I know they've had it probably around at least, I want to say, I know more than 25 years, maybe more like 50 years. Grand River is a major thoroughfare and it's made there to move traffic and it's made there for businesses. So I actually like the building that it's cut into two and it's identical on each side. I did ask them to show us a better plan for their landscaping when they brought it to the Planning Commission. They didn't really show, I thought, in the whole part of the landscape plan, but they brought it today and I like it a lot. And I think that's what Grand River is for. It's where our businesses should be. And, that goes hand in hand with our residential. Business helps pay the taxes for the residential. And I'm excited that Walbridge can finally start developing their property. We've been waiting a long time. We've seen a lot of conceptual things that were going to go there way back in the day. Toyota was supposed to go there. And so I think nice, clean business like this is good for our community. So I'm in support of it.
Okay. Michelle?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that I know that they're building a spec building or waiting to see who's really going to be the user since we don't know that yet. And that we just basically know once the tenants are in that they come back to us to be reviewed, just so we know that for sure.
Yes, and I think that they have to do that.
Yep, I know. I just wanted to make that clear. So, okay, that was my only concern. But yeah, the building is beautiful.
Okay, Robert?
It is, yeah, it's overall a nice plan, and I don't know that I have any specific concerns about the wellhead district itself, but I guess I'll echo some of the traffic concerns, and also wanted to comment that on the sidewalk note, I understand that yes, the adjacent parcel has a 5-foot path, but the ordinance specifies that it should be a 10-foot path along a major thoroughfare like Grand River, and just because your neighbor did it isn't really a good reason to me. I guess I'd like to see if that could be changed back to the 10-foot without too much impact. But
okay. Well, I'm going to put my 2 cents in, and I do agree that Grand River has always been the industrial corridor from Lansing to Detroit, and it always will be. I mean, you know, as it develops, unfortunately, back when a lot of the industrial development was going on, Lyon Township kind of got passed over. And I do believe that this is the place to put any type of industrial buildings. Myself, I look at the building and I think it looks, I agree. I think it looks pretty nice. I think it'll add a lot. I mean, if you look at the landscape there now, it's weeds and trees and overgrown, and it has been for years. And I really believe this will add something to our township. And, you know, again, we go back to, they were nice enough to bring the building and show us what it looks like. But Sean's right. That's a planning commission thing. And we're here to make sure that our wellhead protection is protected. And that's kind of what this vote's all about, to allow them to build this building in the wellhead protection area. And I think that's our decision tonight. And I believe what Michelle talked about, they do have to come back. And I think when they come back to put tenants in them buildings, that's when we have to drop our foot down and make sure that our wellhead is protected. And I think that's going to be the issue when it comes back for that. But as of right now, our decision is to say yes or no to the special land use. And that's up to you guys. So if you have any more questions for the applicant, or somebody would like to carve out a motion, now would be the time to do that.
I had one question. The sidewalk size has been resolved, right? The planning commission approved this subject to them increasing the sidewalk. So that's a done deal, right?
We did, Sean. We
Okay.
talked about the 10-foot, but we wanted it to be uniform. And so we agreed to leave it at the 5-foot, but we did have a discussion on that.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I agree. We kind of do that on the north side too. There's like this patchwork quilt of smaller sidewalks and larger sidewalks, I guess. I don't know. My feeling would be that when you guys look at it again, we try to push them. I mean, we can always hopefully make a gain to the west. Maybe when Magna comes in to do their expansion, we can get them to replace it with a larger sidewalk to match this one. So I guess I just asked the planning commission to maybe look at that again, and for Walbridge to offer that, because it is the correct dimension and the right thing to do at this point.
Okay, Sean, I heard that, so I'll make sure I relay that to the planning commission.
Thanks.
Brian, I have a question. What would be the difference in cost between the 10-foot asphalt path and a 5-foot concrete sidewalk?
I'm gonna punt that one to Leslie, sorry.
Oh, okay. Leslie, what do you got for me?
Well, I'd have to spend a little more time on it than to run a number.
No, do it now.
I don't have that number handy.
I see where you're going, and I like this.
Would it be, I think since the requirement is this 10-foot path, and I understand that matching it to the 5-foot, I do like the sense of uniformity and having a similar look, but in its attempt to follow the ordinance, but also kind of help in that uniformity, kind of straddling both of that, would you make a contribution to our bike path fund in the difference that may or may not be there, or just a straight cap number of a contribution, since you are not really meeting the ordinance?
Well, I'm not going to spend my client's money. Torno, it's time for you to chime in.
Well, look, I can appreciate that, but I highly doubt we contributed a big amount down on South Hill Road. We are paving South Hill Road. We've spent over $2 million improving the drain that really benefits many, many people beyond Walbridge. I'm not going to go back to our principals and ask for more. Everything we're doing here is Class A We're going above on our landscaping, larger caliper, contributing. We've worked with Leslie, we've worked with the road commission, the drain commission, and have been the first to always open the checkbook. We're now in the development phase, and we will give you a Class A building and product, but as far as contributing without seeing the direct benefit, I highly doubt it.
Well, it could not hurt to ask. So
I understand. No, look, I mean, the people that I've worked with there at the township, I sit on the DDA board. Walbridge has always been very, John has let me open the checkbook, and we have spent a lot of money out there. I don't know if you guys have had the opportunity to see the drain at all, but I've seen aerials of it now, and with our drone and so forth, we've improved a mile of that drain at the cost of, between all the engineering up front and all the past 3-4 years to actually constructing, and now we've spent upwards of $2 million. So, and that benefits the whole township, and we hope we're going to continue, obviously, across the rest of the property, and eventually that'll help out the downtown district and heading towards the airport and everything else. So,
Adorno, would you consider an easement for cross access for that property to the east to help kind of consolidate curb cuts in the future to address some of these traffic issues? I mean, we don't need to necessarily design the configuration today, but that's one of the standards of the special land use approval. And that would probably go a long way to help. Obviously, it's not going to be built today. It's not going to be built tomorrow, but in the future, so we have the opportunity, if it makes sense.
I guess we would take it under consideration, and we could analyze it. I don't even know the neighbor, so I have no idea what they'd want to do or not do.
Yeah, the purpose would be to provide the easement on your side of the property, and then when the time comes for them to connect, it could be improved potentially at their expense if they wanted to use the driveway, but to make that connection to your driveway. So really, they would have to not only agree to it, but they'd have to fund the improvements in order to be able to utilize it through that easement. So I don't know that there's a real risk or high risk. It's a very small parcel too, but again, it could go a long way to helping to address some of the traffic concerns in the future.
I guess we take it
One
under
thing
advisement.
that I would, I just throw out there as far as that easement goes, is that there is an overhead utility easement that goes and crosses Grand River between those two properties. So we would just have to verify within that easement what is allowed and not allowed, if there could be a road going underneath it or not.
Well, I mean, if you provide the easement now, that would obviously have to be done prior to construction. The easement's the easy part. You're simply saying, hey, we're going to give you access from that property line to get to that driveway. So what I'm asking for are lines on paper, something that's recorded. So we're not building anything. We don't need permission from anyone right now. You guys can just say, yeah, we'll do it. And, I think given what we've discussed tonight, that's a reasonable compromise.
What do you think?
I'll make a motion to approve special land use AP 21-12B with all of the, discussion tonight that was agreed upon and all the, recommendations of the Planning Commission pulled in. In addition to that, a cross-access easement will be provided by Walbridge to their easterly property line to accommodate future cross-access to the property to the east.
I'll support that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed based on criteria for impacted traffic.
All right, we're going to move on to Orchard Crossing Plan Development, Conceptual Review AP 2111.
Thank you.
Brian?
John, if I could interrupt before Brian gets started.
Yeah.
Since I just did interrupt. I just have to say that I review every development proposal that comes before me like it is going to be built in my backyard. This particular one will be no different other than the fact that this will be in my backyard. So I just want that clearly noted on the record that this development proposal does border my property.
Okay, thank you for that, Chris. Okay. Brian,
Okay.
you want to go ahead and start us?
I will, thank you. And I have to apologize in advance to our applicants in case I use an old name for one of the previous developments like I did in the Planning Commission meeting. The proposal of this evening is entitled Orchard Crossing. This is a plan to develop the Irwin Orchard property at the corners of Silver Lake Road, Kent Lake Road, and Pontiac Trail. The overall project is being proposed as a planned development. And so as the Township Board is aware, this is a 3-step process. You'll have concept review, preliminary review, and final. Concept that you're doing this evening is an informal opportunity for you to comment on the land uses, on density, on traffic patterns, on things like that. That may be of concern to you that you would like the applicants to consider and potentially address at the preliminary phase. Preliminary is where all of the elements get set in stone for the final development. So overall number of housing units, residential density, in this case, adjacent uses, agritourism uses that are related to the orchard, things like that. All of the square footages and details get worked out at that phase. And then final is where we do a lot of the cleanup. The plan development agreement comes into form. Any easements are defined, any project details get worked out. So we've got a long ways to go with this one, but in terms of the proposal at concept, we have several elements, and I'll try to point those out to the public. So the first is retaining the cider mill in its existing location. This is a 12,000 square foot building with the cider press and the cafe and retail sales. There is also a tasting room and restaurant that is proposed on the south side of Silver Lake Road. That would be a full year-round restaurant. There is outdoor gathering space in the red area here between the cider mill and the tasting room. There's a themed activity area. This is, as I know, Lombardo is going to walk through several of the options there, but it's going to be a programmed element for the site. You can see a large portion of the existing orchard will be retained. There will be a proposed event venue here at the northeast corner of Silver Lake Road and Kent Lake Road. And then the western portion will be 121 single-family homes. The lot sizes there are 70 by 120 feet. Those are typical. Of course, there'll be some modifications to that. And then at the northwest corner of Kent Lake and Silver Lake Road will be 40 duplex units in 20 structures. So that's the big picture overview here. We have several comments, and I won't go into specific detail on the whole letter, but I do want to address a few things. In terms of our future land use, our existing zoning and future land use. So as part of the packet, you have our zoning map, which indicates that all of the site is located in our R10 zoning district. So that's single family residential is a primary use, agriculture is a primary use, and agriculturally related uses are also permitted in the district. In terms of the surrounding properties, they are largely large lot single family residential. We do have some of our 0.3 zoning district is located here at the southeast corner. But essentially all of the surrounding uses are residential in nature. So we have no concerns with the compatibility for the residential component, and the orchard existing as it does today. I think it's fair to say that residents are used to a agritourism type use at this site. In terms of the future land use designation for the property, we have single family residential A is the planned development character for the site. So that allows residential densities of up to 1.25 units per acre. And as it's proposed today, the calculated density is 0.89 units per acre. So it's well under what is planned for the site. Moving back, I want to talk a little bit about open space as it's proposed today. And obviously these numbers are a bit subject to change, but the residential development component will allow for 54 acres of open space in terms of buffering yards, in terms of common spaces in the middle of the residential development, and then some of the green belts that are along the roads. This illustration also proposes that all of the agricultural and orchard open space is shown here in green. That is about 90 acres for the orchard and adjacent uses. Go back to the plan as I run through. Lombardo Homes also has listed a few recognizable benefits that I think are worth pointing out specifically. The first is the preservation of the orchard and cider mill. That was one of the things that we consistently heard with previous proposals, was the need to save and maintain as much of that orchard as possible. The second here is traffic improvements. They have proposed, Lombardo has proposed to contribute not less than $150,000 towards improvements at the Silver Lake and Kent Lake Road intersections. So while I'm on that topic, I know that the Road Commission for Oakland County is studying this site and considering options for either signaling or installing a traffic circle. And so as with our presentation at the Planning Commission, we just encourage Lombardo to incorporate any recommendations that are coming out of the Road Commission study that they're doing. The third recognizable benefit that is listed in the application materials is a sidewalk extension that will run along the west side of Kent Lake Road up to the elementary school. We'll ask Greg to address this, but one of the questions that I received just heading into this meeting was whether or not that sidewalk would go all the way to, would connect to essentially the front door of that elementary school, or just to the property line for the elementary school. So I'll give Greg a little bit of time to think about the answer there and have that ready. So, but in terms of the other criteria that are required for the township to consider a PD, the minimum acreage for the site is addressed. In total, this proposal is 180 acres. And I'll defer to Leslie in terms of specific requirements for utilities and stormwater management, but it appears that most of the concerns that you would have in terms of provision of services can at least be addressed with some engineering. I mentioned in terms of compatibility with the master plan being a criteria, the residential density appears to be in line with what we expect here. The commercial uses that are associated with the cider mill and turning that into a year-round option, as well as having a potential event venue, do fall in line with what we would anticipate for agritourism type uses. Obviously, the specifics of those operations are up for the township to decide, but we recently went through those amendments for agritourism, and a lot of those, actually I should amend that. I believe that all of those criteria that we added to the ordinance can be achieved in some form or fashion with this development. Obviously, we're a little bit light in terms of details for the venue and things like that, that will get flushed out during the preliminary review. But we do think that they can be accommodated and can be incorporated successfully here. We've done a preliminary economic impacts study, and you see our facts and figures there. And I believe I outlined all of those assumptions. We note that we anticipate a $10,000 annual hit to the general fund, but the library operating fund, police fund, and fire operating fund would all see improvements based on the project. So we don't find anything negative there. And of course, those findings are subject to change as we work through specific lot unit counts and things along those lines. The open space requirements are met here. I do want to note that preservation of natural features is one of our criteria, and one of the things that I personally find to be a good use of space and maintenance of existing wetlands systems is all of the land that is preserved here at the northeast corner along the event venue. Not only could that provide some cool opportunities for a scenic outlook at the event venue, but just the preservation of that and very little impact or direct impact or filling of those wetlands is obviously encouraged and nice to see here. And then preservation of the existing orchard, of course, is a benefit as well for natural features. I hit on most of the things that I want to talk about. I do want to note that the proposed setbacks for the single family residential lots would be a 25-foot front setback, a 30-foot rear setback, and then side setbacks of 6 feet for a total of 12 between structures. And then in terms of the duplex units, we would see 25-foot front setbacks, 30-foot rear setbacks, and 20 feet between the structures themselves. We do note that these plans at this point are largely conceptual. We do expect to see sidewalks and bike paths along all of the road frontages and connecting all of the different elements of this project. Of particular interest from a pedestrian standpoint is how a pedestrian may cross from the orchard parking area to the potential overflow parking area. We see this overflow parking area as a big benefit. Obviously, we'll get rid of some of the parking that occurs on Pontiac Trail and even on Silver Lake during the peak season of the orchard. I think that overflow parking area will get rid of those concerns as long as there's a safe crossing across Silver Lake Road there. So we encourage the applicants to address that and work with the Road Commission on what that crossing is going to look like. And then all of the landscaping requirements of the ordinance will of course be addressed at the preliminary phase, but both the east and the west side of the single family home area are significantly buffered with berms and landscaping. And then we'd anticipate a lot of green belt along all of the road frontages as well. A particular note here, the northeast corner, the event venue, I think there's some opportunity for some pretty cool landscaping features or elements that can really highlight what that event venue is. So, as we note in our review, in summary, we think that this is a project that is in line with what the township's master plan anticipates. We don't see a lot of potential for conflict between land uses. This is something that is an agritourism use that's in existence today, supplemented by single family development that is largely in line with our density expectations for the area. So from those standpoints, we are generally supportive of it. You can take a look at the Planning Commission minutes, which were generally supportive as well. I will note that there was some questions regarding the density calculations, but we can work through those as the project further develops. So with that, I can take any questions that the board may have.
Okay, Brian, thanks. Before we get to questions, Leslie, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to refer to our April 22nd review letter, which is in your packet this evening. And just to talk about the significant items at this point. Item number 3, an off-site sanitary sewer extension will be required. It appears that the intent is to utilize an on-site pump station, which will discharge to a gravity sewers and ultimately to Township Pump Station number 1, which is to the north of the site. Please note that this is not in conformance with the recently updated and adopted sanitary sewer master plan. The master plan allows for a portion of the Irwin property to be serviced to the north, but does not allow for all of the parcel to be serviced. We also included the sewer master plan map, which might be under the Planning Commission packet items, but that should be discussed tonight on whether or not the board would be in favor of the redistricting of this project. If that is the case, then we would do a sewer capacity analysis with the preliminary plan submittal. Item number 4, public water main is immediately available to the property by way of an existing 16-inch main along Pontiac Trail and Silver Lake Road. Item 5 and 6 actually are very similar. It basically is requiring that as part of the preliminary PD submittal that a downstream analysis of the detention basins be provided, and that we have time to review that adequately before a public hearing is scheduled. Also, item 7, we note that the new Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner and Lyon Township stormwater standards are imminent and will be incorporated into the engineering standards, and we anticipate that revision to be late this summer. If projects are not approved prior to Lyon Township's adoption of the engineering standards, the applicant will be required to meet the stormwater standards. Also, item number 10, please note that CES could not review the parallel plan for conformance with the stormwater sizing requirements. Not enough information was provided for us to determine if the stormwater ponds on the parallel plan would meet the pond sizing requirements. And that completes the engineering items at this point.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. I guess before we get into questions, the applicant is here, and I think you have a small presentation or a 20-minute.
Yes, or less, or
okay,
less.
Sounds good.
I will share my screen. I trust you guys have it.
Yep.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. Greg Wendingland with Lombardo Homes. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come before you. The presentation I have, that's not a flashback to last week. Basically, what we're going to show you is the same presentation we gave to the Planning Commission so that everybody's getting the same information. The only changes are we've updated and added a few items. So with that, we always like to provide introductions and contact information. We always say if somebody wants to get a hold of us, we don't want them going through a switchboard and being frustrated. So we provide cell phones, emails, direct contact information. On the Zoom meeting tonight is Anthony Lombardo. Introduce myself, Greg Wendingland. Joe Klee and Jennifer Thomas are also with us on the call. John Ackerman of Atwell is our civil for this project. And Mike Labaday, who's not with us tonight, but he is the traffic consultant for us. Oops. As always, we like to have an agenda. It helps myself keep on task. You'll note in the upper right corner, I've got some blue text, and throughout this presentation, wherever you see blue text, it's either an amended slide or it is new information from our April 26th Planning Commission meeting. So our agenda, I want to talk very briefly about our history in Lyon Township as being a good partner, give you an overview of Orchard Crossing, and then a new item that we added is we want to address some of the concerns we heard at the Planning Commission level, and then have any questions that we can answer for you or general discussion. And as has been alluded to, this is only conceptual tonight. So there's some items that we're going to ask if we can work with either CES or planning consultant and figure out what we need to do, but we would have those fully addressed when we come back for our preliminary review stage. So our history in Lyon Township, really from day one, we've really been a good partner in the township and with the township, right? Going back to the days of Mill River, we worked in all 4 of the components of Mill River, the Michigan War Dog Memorial. We're actively developing Crystal Creek South and Windridge and estates at Hutsfield 2, Saddle Creek, Sterling Trail, now estates at Elko where we've purchased lots. And of course, in the upper left area is the Orchard Crossing proposal. The general location has been already discussed. It just kind of outlined in blue here, give you a real good idea of what it is. Those are not exact property lines, but they're pretty close. So how did we get here with this layout? Very extensive review of the master plan, the future land use plan, existing surrounding land uses. We wanted to be very sensitive to that. Extensive review of the PD ordinance, township and public comments on prior submittals. We know there were a lot of concerns over density, kind of the overall intensity of what was proposed. Traffic, of course, is always an issue. And then stormwater issues, especially in Lyon Township, we're very sensitive to the concerns that we have in Lyon Township. The key goals and objectives from our plan overall, more than anything, was to ensure that the orchard business not only survived, but was sustainable. If we pared this down to something that was just bare minimum, it may work for a couple of years, but we wanted to make sure it was sustainable. So throughout our entire process of planning this, that was our number one goal. And then we want to maintain the spirit and intent of the master plan, which I think will demonstrate that. We want to address as many of the concerns as have previously been voiced as we practically can. We want to provide a reasonable amount of density. We'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly. Wanted to minimize the impact on our neighbors, and we wanted to pay our fair share of traffic improvements. So just kind of some technical information, a little under 181 acres, 54 acres of it will be residential. The rest will be dedicated to the orchard and orchard related business. Open space, we've got a very significant amount of open space. 20% is required. We're providing 70%. Density, as was mentioned earlier, the master plan for this area is 1 to 1.25 units per acre. We're proposing it at 0.89 with the composition of the different residential breakdown there. Yield plan, how many times is a yield plan and what's proposed identical, right? Usually us included, we try to, whatever the yield plan is, we try to attain that yield. And in this case, the 161 seemed to be the best fit in everything. So even though the yield plan comes in at 165, 161 is what we're proposing. The orchard operations, existing and future, again, this is the area south of Silver Lake. As Brian mentioned earlier, there's a lot of existing uses. There's a lot of expanded uses. This agritainment area is for some little tractor rides, some kiddie event things. These areas down here are representing hay bales or straw bales where classes can come out and have a field trip and they can do some interactive activities. I'll just jump in right now and address one of Brian's questions about the safe traffic. We're looking to put a signalized crossing right here that would be activated only for pedestrian use. So at those times where a pedestrian wanted to cross there, they could activate the crosswalk signal and it would temporarily stop traffic and allow safe passage. Also with the intersection improvements that we anticipate happening at Silver Lake and Kent Lake, we know that the Road Commission for Oakland County will obviously design in safe pedestrian traffic in that area as well. We know that you have a bunch of concerns. We're very aware of them. The sustainability of the orchard business, we've talked about that a little bit. We primarily wanted to make sure that that remains a viable ongoing enterprise. There was also concerns about ensuring that it remains an orchard business, right? There was a concern that the developer gets the houses approved and then a few years later, the orchard goes out and all of a sudden you see more houses. We as the developer or future landowner or any other future landowner would not be able to change that. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. We have a slide on that. We'll get back to that. Traffic, density, and stormwater management. We know all of these are big concerns of yours. Orchard operation existing year-round is needed. I'm sorry. The continued orchard operation. Again, we as the landowner would not be able to change that with all the steps that are needed with the planning commission, the township board, the board action. It'd be an amendment to the PD agreement. There would be so many steps needed to convert this to any use other than what the rezoning, which would dictate, it would lock in the agricultural use of the property. So to change that would be a very big step and something certainly that the landowner would not be able to do. To ensure the continued use of the orchard operation, we're expanding it to year-round operation, which is critical for the sustainability, the agri-tainment area, the wine testing, and the future event venue on the north side of Silver Lake. For traffic, as Brian mentioned, we've committed to a minimum of $150,000 contribution for intersection improvements at Kent Lake and Silver Lake Road. Currently, that has a level of service of F. I believe a level of service of D is considered the bottom of the acceptable range. So this is 2 steps below what would be considered currently acceptable. We're obviously looking to help improve that. The typical improvements that you would see at any drive approaches, taper lanes, bypass lanes, things like that. The signalized crossing, talked a little bit about that in this general location. Pathways along main roads and to Kent Lake Elementary School. To answer Brian's question about how far would we take that, we would like to be able to answer that at the Planning Commission preliminary step. I will say that we will commit to getting it as far as reasonably makes sense for all parties. In looking at an aerial, there is no sidewalk on the school grounds other than right up near the building. So in working with Leslie and her group and Brian, and we'll work with the school and figure out what makes the most sense as far as where we could extend that sidewalk, but we will have a very good thorough answer for you at the next step here. Traffic will be heavy during prime visiting time. You know, fall weekends are still going to be heavy just like they are now, but the rest of the time with the traffic improvements, there should be a significant improvement in the overall traffic in the area. Concerns over density, as we've mentioned, at 0.89 units per acre, our proposal is less than the master plan density for this area, meets the spirit and intent of the master plan and the PD ordinance. We're actually 2.25% less density than what would be otherwise allowable. And again, 161 units, 121 in the single family, and then 20 buildings of 40 duplex units in the duplex area. This is a new slide, completely new from the Planning Commission meeting. Anthony was asked what our secret sauce was that allowed us to kind of make this work economically when other proposals could not, with this amount of density and so on. Again, going back to our overriding theme of ensuring that the orchard remains sustainable. So the first thing we did is we determined what acreage was needed for that to happen. And that's what you see here. And then we needed to understand that there's separate values for the land that the orchard will occupy and the land that's available for residential development. And then we analyzed the sewer districts going back from 2010, 2017, 2018. I think there were amendments to the sewer district in each of those years. We, at one point, came up with a yield plan of 210 residential units. It's a very aggressive plan. And in all honesty, we know it would be objectionable and not very likely to get approved. So we're not even showing it to you. We came up with a little less aggressive plan of 189 units, still more than we thought the township and the residents were looking for in terms of prior submittals, prior discussions, and so on. And again, we ultimately felt that probably was not an approvable plan as well. The 161 is pretty conservative. We're pretty confident in how we arrived at that number. And again, 4 less than what the yield plan would show. We do think this is a very reasonable density, and it does provide the economic success for the residential land. So that balances the value of the orchard related land with the residential land. And I don't know if it's secret sauce or not, but that was kind of our thought process to back into how we got the density that we did. So the stormwater management, certainly we've gone through this with Leslie on all of the projects in the township. We know this is of prime concern to the township and the residents. We completely understand the residents in this area want to ensure that all the safeguards in place to make sure they don't experience any downstream flooding or problems. So even at this early conceptual stage, Leslie has been talking with us and we've been working on things. I think we have a meeting coming up with her maybe next week to talk further about this. Our engineer, the township's engineer, Oakland County Water Resource Commission engineering staff, all of them are professional licensed engineers in the state. Between the 3 groups, we will ensure that the stormwater is as it should be as far as the design and the function of all our stormwater management. So again, this is another new slide from that presentation. As we were talking further about the stormwater, again, we really understand the concerns in the township. Going back to our partnership with the township since we've been here, Saddle Creek experienced some flooding offsite to the west. We worked to create a solution for that. Crystal Creek South, there was some significant issues on Belladonna Street. We worked to grant some easement and some drainage path through Crystal Creek South. So we helped resolve that. Sterling Trail, even though we've not broken ground on that site yet, that's the community that is just south of Saddle Creek. There were some significant flooding issues for the residents. Even though this is the city of South Lyon, we were asked to take a look at this and see if we could help alleviate that. So in our engineering plans, we've incorporated a storm sewer that will help drain this area and provide some relief for that. So again, we'll work with the township engineer and the county to make sure that we're implementing best management practices and that the stormwater system is designed as it should be. Single family residential, the typical elevations, it's essentially what we have in Saddle Creek with front entry garages rather than side entry. The market dictates the prices. Obviously, we are a for-profit builder, and whatever the market will dictate is where we can go with it. We do anticipate this will be the general price range for these homes. For the duplex communities, we've got some different elevations, and we anticipate will be in the $350,000 to $400,000 range. Again, these are premium, very nice duplexes. These are not low end. These are not rental. These are not designed for rental. These are for sale product. And whether they're people who are downsizing, want to stay in the area for kids, empty nesters, whatever, these are definitely a high quality product. With that, I don't know if I was at 20 minutes. I think I was below 20 minutes, but we would love to answer any questions. And again, Anthony is here, Joe Klee and Jennifer Thomas, as well as John Ackerman. Thank you.
Okay, Greg, thank you very much. That was a nice presentation. I guess before we start, the first question, and I know we might as well get it out there, is with the orchard. Do we have somebody in mind that's going to actually take the orchard on, or is that something the homeowners are going to have to run?
I think Mr. Lombardo can address that.
Yes, I'm in negotiations right now with the Blakes, and they're really interested in the site. I think I got them convinced that it's the right opportunity for them. It's a matter of how this meeting goes and how the planning commission meeting went well, and the board meetings hopefully goes well, and how they're received with the land uses that we propose. Because the land uses that we propose, I'm friends with them, is what they would think would be needed to make it successful. So.
Okay, so the Blakes, that's big time. That's good. They run a good show. All right, so we're going to go ahead and remember, everyone, this is conceptual. We'd like to give them some ideas or negatives or positives or whatever it is. They want to hear them. And who wants to start? Anyone like to start asking any questions? No
I
one
guess
wants
I'll
to?
go.
All right, go ahead, Sean.
Well, thank you for all of that. This is obviously one that those of us who've been around for a while have, this is one that comes back every now and again. And it probably is, as everybody knows, is the biggest kind of hot button area and hot button topic because everybody loves the orchard. Everybody knows that a property owner has a right to sell their property, and you can't, we talk about this every time. You can't force Bill Irwin to stay in business. If he wants to sell his property, he has a right to do that. And I think the public recognizes that too, even though they're attached to the orchard, whether you live in the immediate area or somewhere else in the township. So when I talk to residents, the concerns or desires for this property, if it's going to change, are, traffic. You're trying to address that. Density is a big issue. We've talked about that. I think the density, appears to be in line. Leslie had some comments in her letter related to storm infrastructure, so that needs to be verified. But either way, we're very close, it seems. Open space is at roughly 70%, and the orchard use will remain. Greg, you hit on something at the very beginning that every single one of us was going to ask you. How do you protect this use? Because it's a concern of everyone's. It's okay. You framed it well. Get the houses in, in 5 years, if things go south with the orchard, you're coming back saying, well, hey, we can't do this anymore. We haven't gotten into exactly how you're going to guarantee that this remains an ag use or a open space type use in perpetuum, but you've committed to it. And that's a big thing. I've heard conservation easement thrown out there. Obviously, the plan development agreement has mechanisms for protecting this, and that's something that we'll have to talk more about in the future. So I think of the main desires and concerns, I think your plan so far, to me, is pretty creative in checking all the boxes. I think I look at this, and it's somebody who looks at things like this on a regular basis. It's hard to really focus on one thing. There's so much going on, and it's all very interesting. It's quite creative. So, people say, well, we got together and we looked at doing some different things to try to preserve some of these elements. I mean, you didn't just say that you were going to do that. You did it. I mean, I think you've put forth a really creative plan. This is far and away the best plan that I think the township has seen for this corner. I don't even know what would be a close second. There are some things that you still have to address. This is conceptual, but my feelings about this, given the fact that we know this property is going to be developed at some point, it's again, the owner's right to sell and someone's right to develop it. This is I guess the best start so far. And so I'm encouraged by that, and encouraged that you've kind of taken to heart some of the concerns that you've seen other developers kind of maybe fail on or not be as successful on, might be a better way of framing it. A couple of concerns, maybe soil cleanup. Have you guys done much in the way of environmental testing? I mean, this has been an orchard for a long time. How does that play into this? And you don't have to answer now. Maybe you want to answer everybody at the very end. You mentioned 12 feet between homes. I guess I used to focus more on how some of these homes looked based on my feeling. I mean, maybe some people want 12 feet between homes. It's not uncommon. Others want to live on acreage parcels. I think I'm maybe more focused here on the vast amount of open space and the clustering of houses that's necessary on a smaller lot configuration in order to get large, meaningful, usable open space. So I would like the fire department to weigh in on that. I mean, that's a close distance. Obviously, building materials, are a big, I guess, can be a big help as far as, fire prevention, preventing fires from spreading. I mean, whether you're 12 feet away, 15 feet away, 20 feet away, if that were to happen to a home, it could be problematic, at a greater distance than 12 feet. But that's something I'd like the fire department to weigh in on. Really, most of these homes will be tucked away, and it won't be, it won't look like, it's packed in and visually be a negative impact on very many residents. It's pretty well tucked away. And then the couple neighbors that are kind of that exception up on Silver Lake Road. I think there are 2 homes up there. I don't know that we need to get into what your discussions with them have been. It would be nice to have that property all pulled into this, but if it's not, I know obviously on the south side and on the west side, nothing will change for them. The orchards are there now, they will remain there, but you've got kind of an activity area proposed to the east of them that could be busier, louder, more impactful than, the current, storage building or whatever might be immediately east of them, in the current situation. So I'd like to maybe focus a little bit more, if they are going to remain there, which is certainly their option to do that, how you would screen and buffer them from, the activity that's going to go on, and it may increase in intensity, immediately next door to them. I think at this point, that's really all I had. I've, been spending some time taking it all in. I know the Planning Commission did the same, and I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody else has to say tonight as well. Thank you.
Okay, Sean, thank you. I do have one question. I'm going to allow the others to speak first, but I have a question about the intersection at Kent Lake. If it's decided that the road commission wants a traffic circle, is there enough room? Would you have to lose one of the duplexes? Or do you consider there's enough room to make that happen?
We've generally looked at the geometrics of it and think if the road commission for Oakland County decides to go with a traffic circle, as long as it's their typical traffic circle and not some, monstrosity, we can accommodate that. We may have to shift the actual intersection a little bit, maybe to the east and to the north just a touch, but generally we think we can accommodate that.
Okay, that's kind of important because they go that way quite often now. And then the only, the venue, the venue there, the event venue is kind of, it's a pretty neat idea, but do they have any idea what type of event they're talking about? Are they talking about concerts, open air concerts? Are they talking, did they get into any of that or?
As I mentioned, we'll have very thorough information for the preliminary presentation, but what we know so far is it's not a concert venue type thing. It's an indoor, whether it's wedding, whether it's bridal showers, things like that. And then as Brian was mentioning about the preservation of the wetland to the northeast, they're looking at having some observation areas that would look out over that. Things like that.
That's really nice. And my best, the whole thing that makes me the happiest is as you pull up on that development, everything will be in the back side of the development. It will almost look just like it is now. And that's kind of what we've all been shooting for. And I like that part, but I'm going to go ahead and anyone else like to comment? Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, since you brought up the traffic circle and if they had enough space, I was kind of wondering the same thing. I hate to say it, I don't like reading traffic studies and I'm not sure that I really understand them completely, except that, unsigned and signalized, I recognize as using these roads. John had said earlier that they didn't get back with him on what they're planning, and maybe you haven't heard yet either. We had talked about a signal at Kent Lake Road and Silver Lake, which comes to a T. And then there's the signal at Pontiac Trail that also comes to the T at Silver Lake Road. I know in the past, other developments were thinking about maybe going from Pontiac Trail all the way to Kent Lake Road. And I know that's not what you're proposing. But maybe for future, and I know Brian had also brought it up, now I feel bad about asking about the conservation easement and looking out over the wetlands, and maybe a road can never go from Pontiac Trail to Kent Lake Road on your piece. Maybe it has to come further out. So I don't know if we could really ask for a future easement, but maybe the road commission will look at it with a lot more detail as to whether we go ahead and put a traffic circle at Silver Lake Road and Kent Lake Road and one at Pontiac Trail, or if they think, well, with all that expense, maybe it is wise just to bring Kent Lake Road to Pontiac Trail and just kind of leave Silver Lake going. But it's just things that we've seen in the past. And that's kind of what I really liked, was to see Kent Lake Road come to Pontiac Trail. But again, I get what you're doing. I know that you're saving most of the orchard, or a lot of the orchard, and putting in your homes, where other places have come in with other pieces, asking, for a lot more density and probably spending a lot more money on other pieces. So they were able to consider that loop from Kent Lake to Pontiac Trail direct. So if that isn't something that anyone is looking at, and even the road commission, maybe we just kind of look for a future easement. But again, it might not even be on your property. It might have to be a little bit over east of Pontiac Trail there to do that circle and come up. So I had that question. And then I also had some question about the venue, and you had answered that by it will be indoor, which is very nice, because I thought if it was covered outdoor, we might have some issues. My one thing too of going to the orchard and experience here is south of Silver Lake Road, against Pontiac Trail, where you are talking about the orchard parking area, which is right there along CVS. And you might not know, but just for future, because we're coming up to the next stages after this, is will that be paved? Especially if you're having a tasting room that's probably going to be going year round. Will they consider paving that? Because that'll be a year-round business, and I don't know how you plow that gravel if you want people to come into your business like that. Same with the venue parking. Will that be paved? That was a question that I had, and maybe even the overflow parking area. But in general, the houses you showed were absolutely gorgeous, and the duplexes look wonderful, way out of my price range, but gorgeous. And again, you pretty much did what a lot of the people had been asking for in the past, especially a lot of the neighbors, was to save part of that orchard. So thank you for that. And that's really all I had.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Mhm.
Someone else like to comment? Robert?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the preservation stuff is great. I like the extension of the sidewalk along the west side of Kent Lake Road. I know, details further on the pedestrian crossings in those areas, but I assume you're looking at the Hawk signalization. I think that would work well. I mean, there's not a whole lot I can pick at this point. So you're doing good so far.
Thanks.
That's good. Lisa?
Yes, I have a couple of questions or comments, and I don't really need an answer right now, but just to kind of tick off some of my questions or concerns. A big concern that I have is having a sidewalk that does go to the Kent Lake Elementary School. In looking at the lot configuration, there is a significant portion of the school district parcel that is in the way between your property line and getting it to the elementary school. So to work within the school with the school district and trying to achieve that goal, I think would be very significant. And the closer we can get to having a safe pathway for people to get, one day it's pie in the sky, but one day to be able to get to the Island Lake pathway and to the Huron Valley Trail that goes along there. So I would be interested to see how you would plan to work toward that goal. If there is a small portion of wetlands in the duplex corner, so I guess it'd be the northwest corner, and then also the preservation of all the wetland area in that near the event center. And I would like to see a preservation of that. And would be curious to see if you would end up eventually wanting to do any kind of like walking paths through there, or like if an outdoor chapel of some sort, or like gazebo. If you have plans to do that, I think it's definitely a concern regarding outdoor noise. But I would personally like to see those wetlands put into a conservation easement. Specifically the one that's near the event center, and then the other one that is near the duplexes. I do have a question about your motorized, or about your John Deere Speedway, and asking if that would be motorized agricultural entertainment. And that was one of my big concerns when we discussed agricultural tourism quite a while ago with our ordinance. I do have questions at some point. I'm sure you're going to be able to answer that at a future meeting, but what if there is a plan to sell the restaurant or the event center? Would that restaurant be eventually like, an Applebee's, or would it be a restaurant that is associated with the orchard management? The other question I would have is, would you have employees of the orchard living on the premises, whether it's in, temporary housing or campers, fifth wheels, that type of thing? I'd like to see your plan for sidewalks and pathways on the entire development. What, that would be a future meeting. Sean might have asked about some purchase of neighboring properties, specifically some of those smaller, the smaller lots that have homes on them. Do you have future plans to start bringing in neighboring properties? And I do want to address Leslie's concern with the sewer and water capacity issue. I'm sure that will be addressed at a future time. Would the newly planted orchards around the event center, what would that be U-pick, or would that just be more in nature? And so all of those are my questions and or concerns for a future date. And then one specific question, it's either for Brian or Leslie or the applicant. Was this overall density calculation including the parcel and the wetlands of the event center, or was that density calculation figured out without that part of the property?
Does anyone have that answer tonight?
Yeah, I can show the parallel plan. So on the south side of the road, the parallel plan has 110 units. So you can see it's encompassing the entirety of the property in question, and then 55 are noted, 55 units on the north side. So that's both the west and the east side of Kent Lake Road.
Did that answer your question, Lisa?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Patty, anything to add?
Nothing really to add. I just have a few comments that I actually like the development. I think that they listen to what our residents and what the township board has been echoing, is to try to save the orchard. Like Sean mentioned, it's very beloved to many people, not so much, our community plus outside our community. It's a great venue to bring your kids or just go for yourself. Everyone looks forward to it. The Irwins have always done a wonderful job. I do think they make the best donuts I've ever eaten. So with that being said, I really think that they did an excellent job, and also protecting the surrounding residential. We're 0.03 in the front, and I think in the back they're like 1 acre, but this development is not coming through our subdivision. I remember back in the day, my subdivision didn't want the subdivision in the back to come through us, but sometimes you can't control what you can't control. But they've been wonderful neighbors in the back. I hope they think we're wonderful neighbors in the front. I do want to mention that they do have prepaid RUs on this parcel and have been paying through special assessment for quite a few years. And I think it's very smart and wise that they took the bike trail all the way up to Kent Lake, or as close as they can to Kent Lake School. I think that's a wonderful venue for the children that go to school there. You know, they could take maybe a field trip to go down and learn about a lot of things at the orchard, how to make cider, the ponies, and all the things. You know, Irwin's has quite a few events there themselves, as far as the bee thing, and the ponies, and some bounce houses they've had. And you know, it's very busy for that small little area that they have everyone in. And I wanted to mention, and I think people might not think of this, and no disrespect to the Irwins, but they may have inherited the property. And now when you are selling the property, there's a cost to that. And I think that the reason they need, 365 days a year and or a year-round venue there is because they have to pay for this property, and that's not going to be cheap. By the time you bring sewer and water and the RUs, and they need things like maybe a tasting room or a small restaurant where you can grab a sandwich while you're bringing your kids there. I did look on the Blake's website. It does seem like they're very well established, and it looks like they have wonderful venues. I saw they had an ice skating venue there, and things like that, I think would benefit our township for our young people, and places for people to bring their, grandparents to take the grandkids. And we just have to look at their hours of operation, because in the summer, their hours might be longer than their hours in the winter. Of course, during, I think, apple fall season, every orchard, is very busy. That's such a fun time of the year. But I just wanted to say that those are some of the things that I thought about when looking at this development. And I just wanted to mention that to you guys, because I did mention that at most of those, or all of those, at the Planning Commission, and also the improvement of the intersection to the 150,000, not less than. So, and that obviously is not for us to decide, that's for the road commission. But I did talk to a few of my neighbors. They seemed to be in favor of it. They thought they liked basically saving the orchard, and I think they did a good job at the west part of the back part of the subdivision, protecting the few residents that the orchard would touch, or the residential would touch, and I think they did a really good job. So those are just my comments.
Okay, thanks. We're down to Chris. Chris?
All right. Well, I mean, a lot of stuff was already said that kind of what I was going to say, so that's good to hear. I guess my main comment on everything, which has been said over and over again, is well, I guess to start off, the PD ordinance, requires 20% minimum open space, and this project, as proposed, is upwards of 70% open space, which is well above and beyond what's required. The difference, I guess, that I'm wrapping my head around is the open space is going to be active, which isn't a deal breaker because of the orchard use. What would happen once the once the orchard ceases to exist, I guess is what my concern is. Will this open space and the agricultural uses, just deteriorate? Would it become the responsibility of the homeowners association? I guess that's one of my main concerns. The PD ordinance also limits commercial to 20% of a PD. I guess that's, again, not really a a deal breaker on this one too, because it's kind of associated with the saving of the orchard. And again, the number one concern is, can we keep the orchard saved as presented? And whether that's through an ironclad clause in the PD agreement or through a conservation easement, that's the one thing that has to be solidified. The last thing, the people want is, 5, 10, 20 years down the road is for this open space to just be amended and you have another 160 homes in there. So all my other comments that I'm going to say is, minor beyond that, but it's really just making sure the orchard is truly saved, which is what appears to be proposed. So Lisa touched on some of the community benefits, the sidewalk to Kent Lake. You said you're going to show where that's going to end at Kent Lake Elementary School. If your conversations with the school aren't, don't come up to some sort of a agreement on where to get the kids to the school, we would be open to more off-site pathways, even going south on Pontiac Trail. There's a couple subdivisions nearby where you wouldn't need any right away, and you'd get probably quite a few walk-in customers. The $150,000 donation for intersection improvements, that's nice. We have budgeted for the traffic signal since 2018, so we already have skin in the game as a township. Depending on how this all shakes out with the road commission, maybe that gets added to it, maybe it doesn't. And of course, your number one community benefit is saving the orchard. Again, it just must be truly saved and not, redeveloped in the future. And I think that's what we're working toward. Leslie mentioned the stormwater management. That was one of my neighbor's concerns, especially at the south end of the project. You do have a proposed detention pond, as Leslie mentioned, with no clear outlet. I assume that you guys would be able to work that out, before preliminary plan. And also the stormwater for the orchard operations area. You reference agricultural standards in there. It's a little, I'm not sure what that exactly means. I will say I'm not opposed to the gravel parking areas for the orchard related use, because that does, less stormwater runoff. I would say pave the approaches, as Michelle mentioned too, and maybe at the tasting area. But in terms of, a variance from our engineering standards to have gravel parking areas, I think that works, which saves you money, keeps the whole orchard theme together, and, saves you costs, so it helps save the orchard. Leslie mentioned the sanitary sewer and amending the master plan. My opinion on it is, when we went through the master plan, I looked at it pretty hard with Leslie, and I think I probably went back and forth with the board 3 different meetings or something. But I think we came to a good conclusion on it. Initially, this was all supposed to flow south to Saddle Creek Pump Station. This deviation would make it flow north to the Kent Lake Elementary School Pump Station, which of course saves you a lot of pipe, because that's a shorter distance. And as long as the capacity checks out, which I think Leslie will confirm that it does, this again saves you some money, and I can, rationalize this deviation from the sanitary sewer master plan, given the fact that you're saving the orchard. The traffic impact study, I looked through it. I'm a civil engineer, so I'm a little nerdy about it. I know that'll get worked out with our township engineer review. Let's see, the pedestrian crossing, you answered that question about Silver Lake Road and how we would have a pedestrian crossing between those 2 intersections. Again, it's up to the road commission, but if they do not allow it and force people to cross at the intersections, I would just want to see some sort of either physical barrier to prevent people from playing Frogger, so to speak, whether it's just, some heavy landscaping or a small ornamental fence, because I have crossed the road there. It is not a good thing or safe thing to do. Again, with all these crossings proposed, I'm I think that can work out. We touched on density already. I know the parallel plan wasn't necessarily confirmed per Leslie's letter, so you're under the density it looks like. So even if there's some miscalculation, you're probably fine. I know you're counting the commercial acreage as well, which I believe should be excluded from the density calculations. But again, I know that's associated with your attempt at saving the orchard, so I can try and look past that. The lot sizes, I did hear people complain about the lot sizes, that they're small compared to the adjacent lots along Dixboro and in the back of Patty and I's neighborhood. You know, it's got to be what it's got to be to get this to work. I would like to see the side yard setbacks bigger than 6 feet. I mean, if we can get that up to 10, I think that would be great. It just makes it feel safer and less crowded. And then I agree with Patty too on the landscaping along the edges too. That was nice that berm and landscaping's there to buffer some of the existing homes. Sean mentioned the arsenic soils, so that needs to get checked off too. The duplexes, you know, that doesn't really, the multifamily doesn't fall within the master plan guidelines, though I'm not opposed to it and honestly haven't heard anybody say anything against it. So it sounds like there's a demand, and I honestly don't know, we don't have many duplexes in the township. So I guess as long as we're meeting all the maximum dead ends over there, I think that's, you know, I don't have an issue with that. Again, because, you know, you're doing this to save the orchard. On the commercial portions of the site, I know you mentioned Blake's, it's been in the papers. They're not on any of the paperwork, and I know this negotiation is forthcoming, but I just want to be cautious because we can't necessarily say it is Blake's without anything in writing, and it may not be them. It may be somebody else that is running the orchard. So we just be cautious about it. One question I did have is the service area within the commercial zone. It does describe a proposed 10,000 square foot warehouse. I would like to see details of this. Is this going to be something like an industrial looking warehouse, or is this going to be like a red barn that kind of ties into the whole orchard thing? Depending on that answer, we may want to look at screening, or if it's a nice looking warehouse, you know, let it go. The cider mill that's proposed looks to be a little larger than the current one. Is that a completely new cider mill, or are you retrofitting the existing? The agritainment area, it looks like that is on top of a few existing buildings. Are just confirming whether those are going away or whether those are being retained as part of the agritainment area. You answered the question on the 4 rectangles in there too. Those are hay bales, so hay bale areas, so I appreciate that. The tasting room looks like that's a new building. I assume we have all our liquor license and all that stuff that would be available for it. John had mentioned the event venue, and Michelle too, about the renderings and whether there'll be outdoor music as part of the venue and just the general setbacks. I know looks like it's a future piece, but we should, you know, get as much information as we can on that. And again, all those commercial type uses like the event venue could eventually probably get resold if different uses. And that's kind of cool because we don't really have an event venue in the township. So I do like that piece of it. So yeah, these commercial uses are probably over the 20% allowed in the ordinance. But again, I'm not saying I'm against it because of the fact that this helps save the orchard. And Brian mentioned the fiscal impact. I just, you know, the schools will probably be receiving the most financial benefit from this project. And you did mention the township is not getting any type of tax windfall for this. We typically lose money on residential developments, and we'll lose money on this development. However, you know, I feel it's again acceptable because we are saving the orchard in this case. So again, like, I know I've been blabbing for a while, but most of these comments that I have look like they're pretty easy. They can be worked through. I just want to reiterate that the most important item is that this development proposal is their number one community benefit is saving the orchard. And it's been said, to the planning commission, it's been said to neighbors prior to these meetings, it's been said to the media. And honestly, there's no public here tonight. We received 2 comments at planning commission level. And it is because you're saving the orchard. So the main thing is we've got to make sure the orchard is saved. It's, either in a conservation easement or some ironclad, something in the PD that says this cannot be, redeveloped. And that's really the main thing. And I think everything else kind of would be able to fall in place. So thank you.
Okay, I think that kind of gets us together on all the comments. I just want to say thank you guys for listening to the public with the orchard. I think you've got something that is workable, in my opinion. And I would just like, I can't really wait to see the preliminary on this and actually start seeing it come together where we can get a better idea of what we're doing here. But I do want to say thanks. I mean, you did listen, and I hope the comments that you got tonight were helpful. And well, we just got to look forward. Go ahead, Greg, go ahead.
Just a couple of things. There's a lot of comments that were voiced tonight. We really appreciate your feedback, your very honest and open feedback, both positive and where you have concerns. We will take that and we'll address everything that we possibly can. The one thing, going back to Lisa's comment when she started talking about the John Deere tractors, in my mind, I visualized the tractor pulls that I watch on TV where they have these massive, 2 diesel engines in a tractor, and that it's not that, trust me. It's kiddie rides, whether they're little electric scooters or whatever they are. And we'll have more information for you. But when you started talking about that, that's what popped in my mind. So I wanted to address that.
Well, thank you, because that was the biggest bone of contention when we talked about agricultural tourism. I kept saying, there's going to be tractor pulls. And
yeah, there's not. So
okay.
I'm disappointed now.
Yeah, I wanted to, I know that's a deal breaker for some of you, but I wanted to say that. And then the other thing, just a minute ago, there was a question Chris asked Patty about the residents. We had a Zoom meeting. Normally, before we make any kind of submittal, we have a company policy where we meet with all the surrounding neighbors. We normally invite them to a library or a township hall or whatever, and we'll give them the conceptual presentation. And it does a couple of things. It alleviates a lot of rumors and fear because people hear things and the rumors fly in that. But it also gives us an opportunity to take their feedback and use it. And at the meeting we had, because of COVID, we had to have it via Zoom, but I think we had in the upper 40s on the Zoom meeting. And we had some questions come through that we addressed and things like that. But at the Planning Commission, and Patty, you just answered it, there were 2 people that were on that call. And I don't know how many people are home watching this on YouTube, but again, the absence of a lot of people here, I think, is a really positive sign that demonstrates we did listen and we tried to incorporate all the changes. You guys have given us, in between Joe and Anthony and Jennifer and John feverishly scribbling with myself, we've got multiple pages of things. Rather than take the time to kind of vaguely address some of those things tonight and say, we think we're going to do this or we think we're going to do that, I would rather, unless you guys have a hot topic that you'd really like us to try to address tonight, I would rather compile all your questions, concerns, comments, and when we make our preliminary submittal, we'll provide the thorough responses in that, if that's acceptable.
I have no problem with that, but I can ask the board. Anyone have any problems with that?
Nope, I think that'd be great.
Okay.
I mean, just one more comment.
Go ahead.
If we got Blake's to come here, think about it. We would have 2 of the top class cider mills, probably in the state of Michigan. We had Irwin's for all these years. And if we got Blake's here, we would be lucky. And so I hope your meeting goes really well, Anthony. I hope they come. I really do. I think people would love them. And I've never been to their establishment, but I want to go. But I only hear great things. If you even mention the word Blake's as in the same venue as Irwin's Apple Orchard, it's like, wow, we'd be so lucky.
If I was to add anything to this conversation, it would be that the PUD agreement will specifically restrict this land from orchard operations, what we're talking about, and agricultural use. It could not be used for future residential unless the township wanted that. But based on our conversations, it would be restricted to that, and they couldn't change that. So it would be used as agricultural use, hopefully for the orchard, and I think the Blakes would make it successful.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns?
Thanks again for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the great presentation and forward thinking for our township. We appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks.
Night.
Good night.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to the ARV reconstruction recommendation and possibly contract award. Leslie, do you want to explain exactly what we're doing there?
Yes. ARV 8 is an air release valve that is along Southville between 12 Mile and 11 Mile. And it's in serious disrepair. It's at a very high point in the force main. And it's been compromised by hydrogen sulfide gas that are emitted from their force main. And it basically eats away the metal and the concrete. And we're concerned that this is at the point that we're at risk of the structure failing. Due to the specialized nature of this, we prepared a list of 4 bidders that we invited to bid with Highland Treatment, your sewer operator. And we received 2 bids. D'Angelo Brothers Incorporated submitted the low bid in the amount of $132,290. The second low bid was submitted by DVM Utilities Incorporated in the amount of $145,574. Therefore, we are recommending that the township award the project to D'Angelo Brothers in the amount of $132,290.00. We also recommend allocating a 15% contingency for anything unforeseen that may arise during construction.
Leslie, this is kind of an unusual situation. I'm not sure that a lot of the board here understands what's going on here. Could you kind of explain what happened here, or what happens if this fails?
If it fails, it will the structure itself would actually fall apart, and you're at risk of sewage being on the road. Essentially, a sanitary sewer overflow is the risk. So it's a maintenance project. The structure is probably 20 years old, and it's really at the point that it's in time to reconstruct it. And this is, I would say, specialty contract work that many underground companies probably are not capable of doing. And that's why we worked with Highland Treatment closely to create a list of bidders. Unfortunately, a couple of them did not bid. But we have received 2. We work with D'Angelo Brothers quite often through the township on maintenance items, and so we would definitely recommend them.
Okay. Does everyone understand exactly what's going on here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
It's important that we fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So
can I make a motion?
Please.
I'd like to make a motion to award the bid to D'Angelo Brothers in the amount of $132,290, allocating also a 15% contingency for a total project cost of $152,133.50. So again, $152,133.50.
I'll support. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, you're first. You're faster.
Spending money.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. Get that fixed.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the consideration of approval to install the restroom in the new bathroom. And basically, a lot of you have taken tours and seen the size of the basement under the new addition and how it's set up pretty well for in the future to install offices if we needed them and expand. And so I had the builder go ahead and put together a cost to put in a bathroom with the option of adding another bathroom if we ever moved offices down there, because you need, the women's and the men's bathroom. So basically this first bathroom that they would put together would be complete. It would be next to the window on the north side of the basement. And they would have to cut the floor up. They'd have to move the drains a little bit. But this also includes the plumbing for the bathroom at a later date. So all the plumbing would be in the wall. So when we added the new bathroom, it would just be 3 walls and plumb it in. So the total cost on that was $17,133, and that would be an extra to the contract, and that's why I brought that here. But we all talked about it and looked at it, and Michelle also was talking about having counting areas down there for balloting in the future. And it would just be much easier to have a bathroom available for users in the basement. And
Such a
that's
big,
why I'm bringing that to you.
yeah, with such a big space down there, it would be really nice to be able to have our counting board down there if we needed to.
So that's what I'm asking. I was asking for a approval to get this in. A couple of these things have to be approved quickly because they're actually stubbing up the plumbing and they want to cut the floor and get it ready if we decide that this is a feasible option. So
John, I'll make the motion to approve not to exceed amount of $17,133 for proposal request number 5 by Lynn Hout for the bathroom in the basement.
Support.
okay, we have a motion and a support to install the bathroom in the basement. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, the second one we're going into is, as you know, we've just about replaced everything on the outside of this building. And as you walk up to the building, we have a lot of bad concrete that was never put into the initial contract. Basically, it's the sidewalk that runs the entire north side of the building. It turns and it goes into the door to the boardroom, and it also goes around the flagpole, and there's a lot of concrete here. Now, one of the problems are we've been having heaving problems as you walk in the door, and they become trip hazards in the winter. Now, these guys have said to me there's probably water that's holding underneath them slabs, and in the winter when it freezes, it pushes them up. So one of the things they're going to have to do is when they demo this concrete, they'll have to get under and evaluate the situation, and they may have to install a drain. And that's one of the variables I don't have tonight because they don't know if they'll have to or they won't. So this cost of 21,000, what is it? 21,000.
839.
Oh, 890. I can't see tonight.
839.
839 is to demo the rest of the concrete in the front and put all new concrete in. Now, they did say if we wanted to, they could bust certain flags of the concrete up and replace only ones that are bad. But I thought with all the new construction and how this is going to look in the end, it would look more checkerboardish than, so I thought we'd bring that to the board to see if you want to go ahead and replace all the concrete in the front.
Yes.
Hey, John, what do you think? I mean, do you have a ballpark estimate on a drain? Because I don't want to approve 21,839 if it's going to be a couple thousand extra for the drain. I mean, we need to do this right. This addition, is going to look good and serve this township for 70 more years. And so this investment isn't a long-term investment. This should look good. It should be uniform, and it's obviously a safety issue now. So I guess I would like to add a little bit to this. So if, you do find out that there are a couple $1,000s more needed in this to get it done right, you don't have to try to come back to us. So, I mean, what are you thinking?
Well, the only reason we don't have that in the quote tonight is they don't know which way they'd go with it. they've got to get to a drain. If it's actually got a problem, they'll have to get a drain, whether it's in the parking lot or off to the side into a storm off of the building. So I think once they demo this concrete, they're going to figure that out.
We're talking a small drain though. I mean, it's
Just a
like
small drain to keep the water out from under the front of the concrete there.
So I mean, if we were to say not to exceed 25,000 for the
Yeah.
whole thing, you think you can get it done for that?
I would hope so. I mean, I don't know why we couldn't, but.
Okay.
And let
I mean,
let me just say one other thing too. As we sit right now, the police station is pretty much complete. They are actually moved in, and there was a $50,000 contingency on the police station in the basement. And at the end, I think we're $2,200 under budget. So we did use the contingency because we ran into the drain problems, the drainage problems on the front side of the building that was going in. But at the final, I think we have about a $2,200 positive. We didn't go over budget. In the town hall, because we've been coming back, and anything that's come extra like these that aren't really, I mean, this could come out of the contingency in the end, but we still are 104,000 left in contingencies on the existing hall. So we really are setting in good shape. We've done a really good job, managing this project and keeping things in order. And I just thought that was really awesome. I talked to him tonight and he said, yeah, the contingency is still at 104,000 on the top.
So the original budgeted amount for the project, that included the contingency funds, yes?
I don't have that in front of me, but it was.
Not asking for the number. I'm just saying, I guess, that contingency amount was part of what was budgeted initially.
That's part of the budget, yes. It's just for overruns, things you don't see. Normally, most of the projects that I've ever worked on, there's never enough of that in the budget. There's especially a project like this, everything's so unseen. We're tearing walls apart, we're finding new things every day. So to keep the contingencies like that, I think we're doing pretty well.
John and
Yes.
Leslie, is that quote square feet or square yards? I was comparing just the cost per square foot with the bids we just got for the sidewalks on Long Grand River, and these are quite a bit higher.
Well, this is a big demo too, and this has a frost ledge in the parking lot. That's part of the problem I think we're going to have is as the sidewalk goes out in the parking lot, it actually has a frost ledge on the side of the sidewalk. And that's what's holding the water in. That's what he thinks is holding the water underneath the concrete. And you do have to remember, anything that we do through the builder like this, there's a profit. There's an overhead and profit that's added on that we agreed to in the original cost. So we're not going in and getting bids. He's doing that. And then
Correct.
he's administrating the contract. So.
Well, I haven't made enough motions tonight, so I guess I'll make one more. I will move the approval of the concrete replacement of, I guess, replacing the existing failing concrete in front of Township Hall with an amount not to exceed 25,000, which could include the addition of a drain to take water out of this area. And that's my motion.
I'll support.
All right, we have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Okay, I
Pete.
think that kind of concludes our agenda. Is there any
Hey,
other
John,
comments?
I
Go
just
ahead.
wanted to say, I know that there are a lot of people on a daily basis at Township Hall helping with this addition on both floors and dealing with all the dust. So I want to thank you, Michelle and Patty and everybody else who's pitched in on this. I know it's an exciting time because we're doing a lot of great things and improving the People's Township Hall and doing it efficiently. And I know it's not been easy. It's been a long process, and you guys are doing a great job with everything else going on in the world right now. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks,
that was
Sean.
nice.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Plus, I want to thank you guys so much for that additional sidewalk. We have had a couple people that actually fell by, like John said, it's really
catching your toe.
teasing. And we had a couple people that actually face planted and have, you know, it was pretty bad for a few people. So we really appreciate that more than you know. Plus,
And it's-
plus it's going to look nice, but
Yeah, the timing's great for it, really, to do it now while everything's torn up, just get it done now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, anybody else have any other comments? If we don't, then we finished our business of the night, and I would consider us adjourned.
Great.
Night,
Thank you so much,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Don, I like your glasses.
You know, with it being allergy season, I had to send one of the kids upstairs to grab my